actually served Prabhupada directly for years. She cooked for him. I mean, I know many people did not get this opportunity. So thank you, Malati, for your wonderful services and your constant blessings on us. And Adi Prabhu, I mean, she was instrumental in spreading Krishna conscious movement. She and her family reached to Beatles, especially George Harrison, years back. And Adi Prabhu is in this amazing movement from around 60 years. So many of us were not even born when Adi Prabhu started this process. So let's welcome our guest Malati Prabhu in our traditional way from bottom of heart, loudly chanting 3 times.
When he's done.
Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Hari Bo. Please Malati Prabhu, ki jai.
Hare Krishna. I asked her to move it. I have to remove it because it could fall over. So, Hare Krishna, good afternoon. So, I'm going to be speaking on a particular topic that will include verses from Gita, verses from CC, Chaitanya Charitamrita, verses from Bhagavatam. But the topic is women and ISKCON. And it will include many, many wonderful instructions and guidance from His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada. So you've just had a nice kirtan. We can bypass that part and we can chant together the Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya all together. Om 3 times. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. And now all together, Srila Prabhupada's pranams. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Vaskatya Desatarane Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sari Gaur Bhakta Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare Hare Vancha kalpa tarubhyascha kripa sindhu vaivita patitanam bhavane bimbyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. So it seems that everybody here is kind of like regular. Is anybody all here like for the first time? Okay, so thank you all for being regular attendants of this beautiful temple. So Srila Prabhupada repeatedly requested all of his followers to regularly read all of his books. And since most of us, his followers, that means also you, are conditioned souls, we may bring our conditioning into our reading of his books, and as a result, sometimes may not have a proper balanced understanding. We can look at some of the ways his teachings can be misunderstood, and some reasons why such misunderstandings may occur. So this was a statement by Her Grace Vishaka Devi Dasi, who is a direct disciple of Srila Prabhupada. She's also a published author. She's a photographer. She has, and her husband did that wonderful movie about Srila Prabhupada. About this. And she's also the temple president of Bhakti Vedanta Manor. So male and female psychological tendencies, this is something that whether you're, Hare Krishna or anybody in the world, there's these psychological tendencies. And there's a tendency in general for men to have some feeling of superiority over towards women. And the ladies, they tend to defer to the men. And this is not a good thing or a bad thing. We're just it's an observation. And when we come to Srila Prabhupada's movement, so then we're bringing each one of us different cultural, societal, familial, personal expectations about what women, what men can do, cannot do, should not do, etc. We may sometimes mistake some past and present values and customs from traditional India as Vaishnava values, but quite often these are usually some, as mentioned, just customs, traditions. And the Vaishnava values being taught by Srila Prabhupada are not always part of a specific cultural custom from India. And considering that we are trying to bring the whole world, Jeev Jago, wake up, please, here is a wonderful message from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Open the door beyond the India subcontinent, beyond the other regions, many, many other regions in the area. So then sometimes it's awkward because where you're from, well, we do it like this, but over there, that's not how we do it. And, as Westerners, we have less problems like that because basically speaking, we're Westerners. But by the mercy of Srila Prabhupada, we are Vaishnavas. So our understanding of Srila Prabhupada's statements, for example, and mood related to women can vary widely. In the beginning, I was part of the beginning, so starting in 66, but initiated by His Divine Grace in 67, it wasn't until we went for the first time to India, 1970, that we actually experienced these kind of diverse ways of how women would or should behave. How women and men interrelated to one another. It was quite different from our Western experience. And some of it was very good. It was good to learn, Just like here, we are sitting, the men on one side, the ladies on the other, Initially, it was all kind of mixed up, After we went to India, we saw this, this is good. This is, we let the people know back in America and back in England, this is a good thing. But sometimes it's just a custom and it's not connecting you to Krishna, and it's nothing to do with being a Vaishnava. So that is something that has to be, considered. And then there's always the ever-present sexual attraction between men and women, and sometimes that's overlooked or minimized, especially nowadays. Prabhupada saw it. He saw how the men and women in the West were very familiar with each other. So he didn't put too much pressure. And And nowadays, but we saw that in India, again, that's a separation type of thing. Of course, now in India, it's pretty much you've matched America and any other Western country, this, unless you go out into the outside the cities. Anyway, the result of women being chaste and supportive of their husbands is that actually they gain great power. Chastity is a very beautiful thing when it's understood and properly applied and not forced according to what somebody thinks it should be. So like Ravana, he was defeated by Sita's curse. Gandhari, Kunti, Devahuti, these are all illustrious, powerful women, chaste women. Prabhupada writes in purport of Bhagavad Gita 932, Gandhari, although a woman, is no less than Bhishma Dev in character. And we know Bhishma was so powerful. She was no less. Krishna clearly says that women are eligible for the highest destination. Beautiful verse, Gita 932. And Prabhupada confirmed that Draupadi attained the same destination as her exalted husbands. So in Vaishnavism, qualification is not based on the body, but on an individual's consciousness. The wives of Kaliya were actually very serious. Kaliya the serpent, So they were very serious devotees of Lord Krishna. And according to the Acharyas, they had tried to convince their husband to surrender to Krishna, but he just didn't want to listen to them. And then finally, he was in some unbearable agony. And he remembered his wife's advice. And he took shelter of the Lord. This is in the purport from the Krishna book, 10th chapter, 1630. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explained that Kaliya's wives, who were great devotees of Krishna, had been disgusted with their husband because of his demoniac activities. And they started thinking, let this atheist be killed by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Then we'll be widows and we'll just worship Krishna. But after Krishna danced on Kaliya's hoods, he was a serpent, they have the hoods. So after they danced on Kaliya's hoods, his wives understood that Kaliya had taken shelter of the Lord within his mind, and he became humble and remorseful. So then they thought, now our husband is becoming a Vaishnava. We must try to protect him. So although Krishna killed many demons, he spared Kaliya because his wives were great devotees of the Lord, and they offered him loving affection. So then Krishna withdrew the offenses that Kaliya had perpetrated against Garuda and the other residents of Vrindavan. So this was the power of the Nagapatni Vaishnavas, the wives of Kaliya. And Srila Prabhupada came, he transplanted an entire culture from one age, one milieu, to a different age and environment. And at the same time, he left the message intact. He also had to make applications of the culture practical and appealing to young people who had no orientation. We had no clue to that culture. And for the most part, we had rejected the so-called cultural values of our own society. And then the result was many of the young people were becoming accustomed to drugs, promiscuity, etc. And although shockingly contrary to the mood of the day, from the beginning, Srila Prabhupada encouraged us to get married and become responsible rather than just living together, which was the common at that point. And interestingly enough, just last week, I had a Zoom call with a Vaishnav school in India, women and young ladies. They were like quite a variety of ages up until into the 20s, but in teens into the 20s. So beforehand, I was asking, when we were making the arrangement, I was saying, what are the problems these young women are facing? What's their problems, And it was the same thing that we had been facing. That they're going out and they're experimenting with different types of intoxications. They're experimenting with intimate behaviors, So these things, if they're not addressed in a way that will bring one to Krishna, they're not going to go away. And even we find, as I mentioned, even in India, these same habits and behaviors have become part of the life there. Would not have, I would have not, I was surprised, when I was told that. And actually, I was told here by one lady who had come, this was a few years ago. I said, so what is it like you come and you suddenly face this situation? And she said, well, frankly, most of the people, when they come from India, whether it's the men or women, it's generally with students or some kind of job. First thing they want to do, they want to eat meat. They want to try meat if they have been brought up vegetarian. They want to drink alcohol, and they want to have some sexual activity. So this is, showing, it's very sad that the Vedic culture and the teachings of the Vedas have become so neglected that these activities become the goals of young people. So men and women, they do have different psychologies, and trying to ignore or defy or to correct these natural psychological events, they can make relationships very difficult. And not just for husband and wife, but any relationship between male and female. The Prabhupada has made such statements that are there in the books, and sometimes it causes some anxiety for some people. Like, what does he mean? Why has he said this? In one writing, he put, every person must get married. Every woman especially must get married. This is right in CC, Madhya. And at the same time, Prabhupada is speaking to his disciples. It was in 1976 in DC. And he meant if one can remain without marriage, that's first class. He was referring to brahmacharis. And so the temple president said, women also? No, women also. What is the use of this material husband? Make Krishna your husband. Krishna is prepared to become everything. Love him as your husband, your son. Love him as a friend. But he wasn't saying that women should not get married, just like he was saying women should. So we have to understand, Prabhupada was very broad-minded. He was very encompassing. He wasn't small-minded or narrow-minded. And the main idea, the main point was, we should become Krishna conscious, married or not. And throughout his writings and talks, he leaves room for individuality in how we become Krishna conscious. In another statement on the same topic, he said, if one becomes Krishna conscious, she doesn't require a husband. She knows that Krishna is my protector. Why shall I artificially seek after a father or husband? And what protection for a few days either the father or the son or the husband may give? Is it working?
It's fixing the back speakers. It's fixing
It's working now.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. So then Prabhupada said, what protection? Just for a few days, either the father or the son or the husband, just a few days. Real protection is Krishna. This was in 77 July in Bombay. And there's many practical examples in our movement of women who are not protected by their father, their husband, or a son. I can give some examples, like myself. I'm going on. Mukhya from Alachua, temple president of the biggest community in North America. Kaishori, who is working for the BBT. Vrindavan Priya, who is also assisting, working for the BBT. That's why you always see her sometimes behind the computer. Prashanta Devi Dasi in charge of the VIHE in Vrindavan. Vishaka Priya, who now she has retired, but she single-handedly, a young woman from France, got Kirtan Ashram in Vrindavan built for the ladies. She didn't even speak Hindi. She didn't speak any of the local languages. And she had to deal with contractors, subcontractors, the electricians, the plumbers, the city, but to speak of ISKCON. She did it. So it's possible for women to teach, to lead, as the Nagapatni did with Kalia, and as the Brahmana's wives did with their husbands. So the actual system, Prabhupada was explaining in a letter to Shilavati. So Shilavati was when she joined, she was older than most of us. She was 35. And we were kind of like, what does this old lady want? Because we were like in our early 20s. Anyway, she was taught personally by Srila Prabhupada the art of deity worship. So he wrote to her, you can understand that what her question was by the answer. The actual system is that the husband is spiritual master to his wife. But if the wife can bring her husband into practicing the process, then it's all right that the husband accepts the wife as the spiritual master. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has said that anyone who knows the science of Krishna, that person should be accepted as spiritual master, regardless of any material so-called qualifications, such as rich man, poor man, man or woman, Brahmana or Sudra. So this and other statements, they're generalizations or guidelines meant to give informed direction. Generalization, by definition, are inferred from some specific case, generalized, but it's not meant to be applied indiscriminately. Whereas universal statements, such as, we're not the body, we're spirit, soul, those statements are true in every circumstances. And because the wives of the Brahmanas, so you all know that story, the Brahmanas were doing their big pujas, Krishna Balaram, they were hungry. Go ask for something to eat. And the Brahman is like, get away, stupid cowherd boys, we're busy with our puja. And they went back and reported to Krishna, and he said, go to their wives. And the wives immediately, like even though they were engaged to assist the husband, immediately they put down, Krishna's hungry, and they took care. And then what happened was, because the wives were great devotees, the Brahmanas received spiritual benefit, and they finally came to their senses. So the Brahmana husbands noted their wives, having perfected their transcendental attachment for Krishna, did not even outwardly appear to have a trace of attachment for home, husband, children, and so forth, although they were doing their service nicely. So therefore, from that day on, the husbands accepted those women as their worshipful spiritual masters, and they no longer thought of them as their wives, although that was, going on. They weren't being irresponsible. So clearly the scriptures, like Krishna, direct us past bodily designation to the essence of each individual for our own bhakti, with the conversation, and Prabhupada was commenting, both of them are very intelligent. Now he was speaking about Nandarani and Dayananda, both of them, there's a husband and wife team, and they had done really dynamic service for Srila Prabhupada. They'd gone into Iran at a time when, it's still a dangerous time in Iran, but they went to Iran and they set up an ISKCON presence in Iran. And then they came back to America, and they were in charge of the Gurukul in Dallas, the first school we had. Nandarani was helping in every way, including with the deities of Radha Chanji. So Prabhupada said both of them are very intelligent, but Nandarani is more intelligent than her husband. And he laughed. He said, I know that. So then Atreya Rishi, who's actually had an Iranian background and he had helped them navigate going to Iran, he goes, well, I find that he, meaning the husband, I find that he's very intelligent, Srila Prabhupada. Prabhupada said, Dayananda, he is intelligent, but Nandarani is more intelligent. And he laughed. He said, both of them are intelligent, but this girl, she appears more intelligent. And then there was, some of you may know Prajuna, Prabhupada would call him from New York, like Panditji. So he has had a son, Aniruddha. One of the devotees commented, Aniruddha is intelligent like his father. And Prabhupada countered, no, intelligent like the mother, Sarandati. She's more intelligent. And both of them were very much engaged. She was doing the deity worship, taking care of her son and doing transcriptions. So to understand the statement, women are less intelligent, which it's there, the statement's there. We need to understand it and we need to consider what intelligent means in this or in other contexts. So in Sanskrit, there are several words that are translated as intelligence. One is buddhi, and buddhi means the ability to analyze, to judge, or discern, and then another is medha. So in the 10th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna lists medha among the 7 feminine qualities. And medha means mental vigor, wisdom, prudence. So from the purport in 1034 in the Gita, the ability not only to read many books on different subject matters, but to understand them and apply them when necessary is intelligence, medha. And another is considered that is an opulence. So these are broad classifications. Is buddhi, analytical intelligence, and medha is more the nourishing, practical intelligence. And Krishna says, that this is a very good quality. So, but the Lord is so kind. He doesn't show special favor only to one who's a great philosopher. He knows the sincerity of purpose. And for this reason, generally women assemble in greater numbers in religious functions. In every country, in every sect of religion, it appears the women are more interested than the men. So this is purport, Bhagavatam 1:8-20. If you follow anything about, ISKCON or in the world, in China, you hardly see any men. It's amazing, like, where are the men? Do they have any in China? And these ladies are amazing, and they're very powerful devotees. And to preach in China, it's a tricky thing because it's basically not allowed. But these women are very intelligent, and they've figured out how to manage and how to get their government to agree to things that would not normally be even considered. They managed a number of years ago. This one devotee, amazing soul. She convinced the government, because all the books have to go through the government, that kind of thing. She convinced their government to print the Bhagavatam in Chinese and in the Gita by convincing them this is a cultural presentation. So that was an amazing accomplishment. So then there's a statement that has been thrown around, and Prabhupada has thrown it around. And what is that? Many feel like, wow, that's a heavy one. Never place your faith, never trust a woman or a politician. Have you heard that one? So that was from Chanaka Pandit. So there's some context there. It sounds kind of like biased. You know, I know ladies who have just become angry. But if you know, he was a court person, he was, you know, he was a politician. And in those days, if you wanted to bring down another politician, sometimes you would send in a beautiful lady to compromise that person. You see? So don't you know trust a woman or a politician. That's where it's not like a blanket statement about all women. So the context has to be there. But Jamuna Devi, she recalls on 4 occasions Prabhupada mentioned this statement: never trust a woman or a politician. And on each occasion, he would look right at her, you know. And the last time was in Bombay, 73. And there was a small group of men there, and he said that, and he looks at her and he laughs, and then he goes, "So what do you think, Yamuna?" And she goes, "Of course it's true, Srila Prabhupada." And then he became very grave and he looked at her with great feeling and he said, "But you are not a woman, you are a Vaishnava." You know. So Prabhupada's consistent goal was to help us transcend material designations. He wanted to see each of us spiritually advance. You know, women, Sudra, Vaishnavas, ordinarily regarded less intelligent. But if one takes to Krishna consciousness, then one becomes most intelligent. From the teachings of Queen Kunti, chapter 3, although Kunti had the body of a woman, she was a devotee, and therefore she was not like an ordinary, unintelligent woman. She was the most intelligent because she recognized Krishna to be the Supreme Personality of Godhead. What is the ending time?
2:15.
Okay, so everyone in the material world is somewhere on Krishna's map. And every place on that map has, for the conditioned soul, some assets and deficiencies. For example, the scriptures tell us that we can transcend the modes of material nature. First, we must get to the point of mode of goodness. And to be in the mode of goodness is advantageous, it's essential. But then those in that mode of goodness, they can get stuck in their comfortable goodness, peaceful, uninterested, you know, they find everything very, you know, shanti, okay. But then they're so comfortable, they become uninterested in spiritual life, or they don't want to participate in any tapasya to attain it. So as a result, they're unable to free themselves from the most drastic situation, repeated birth and death. So that's the flip side of the mode of goodness. You know, we have many, many wonderful persons who come, they're interested in yoga. And yoga is quite often, you know, it's into this mode of goodness, nice people, sweet people, but they're comfortable. And if we mention anything about the material world, they will, they consider, well, why are you being negative? It's such a, you know, look, so nice, you know, but birth, death, disease, old age, it's still there. Vaishnavas are beyond all designations and classifications. And in the purest state, then you see everybody as beyond these designations and classifications also. And then the association of such persons is uplifting. Srila Prabhupada said about his female disciples, these women are not ordinary women. They're preachers, they're Vaishnavas, and by their association, one also becomes a Vaishnava. And a personal story here was in Calcutta. Anybody here been to the temple in Calcutta? Yeah. It's the same building since forever, a little bit, you know, altered but at the time we were there, it was really awkward because everybody, men and women, were all living in the building. And the women we lived up on the roof. we had, we had we had these little tent things, which were really mosquito nets, to be honest. and we were, and not only for mosquito nets, but I don't know if you've ever seen those big, huge bats that come out in the evening. So they would, this mosquito nets protected us from the bats and the mosquitoes. But to get to our rooftop quarters, we had to go through the only bathroom. So there was one bathroom for the men and the women, and it contained a bathtub, a big, huge metal tank to fill the water with, and the toilet, all in one situation, and a door on each end. So from the temple side, you would go through, and then if you wanted to go to the roof, then you had to go through the other door. And if you're using the place, you had to lock both doors. And sometimes there would be forgetfulness, one of the conditioned soul's problems. So the door wouldn't be locked, and then somebody come in, whether it was man, woman, and you'd be like, oh no. And then we had that big, big tank of, you're supposed to fill it up every morning with water, because in those days the water came on at certain times. But that's not a Western feature. So we just always had a problem with that. We would not always remember. And then suddenly there you were with no water for anything. So, it was awkward. And the men got an idea, not all of them, but some of them. And they were promoting this idea. The women shouldn't be here. They should just go somewhere else and stay. Make things easier. And finally, they decided they were going to present their solution to Srila Prabhupada. So it was on a morning walk. Now, when Prabhupada would go on his morning walk, myself, Koshaya, and Palika, we would clean the temple, take care of the deities, I would cook, and when he'd come back, we would know it, because at that point the stairs were wood, and you'd hear him, his cane knock. So we knew he was coming. We'd run to the door, open the door, and we'd be standing there to greet him. So on this particular day, when the men with their solution for the problem in the temple was to get rid of the women, they were presenting it to Prabhupada. So one of the reason we know how this happened is one of the men reported to us, because he happened to be Kaushalya's husband. So, so they're, yeah, Prabhupada, yeah, Prabhupada. So it'll be a solution to all of this. The women just go live somewhere else. Of course, they didn't have anywhere else in mind, but just get us out of the temple. So Prabhupada didn't say a word the whole time. Now he's coming up the stairs, the door's open, we're there, we're smiling with folded hands. And he turns around and he looks at all the men. And then he looks at us and he takes his cane. He goes, yes, but if you associate with these women, you'll go back to Godhead. And that was the end of that story. But still, we were feeling, as the ladies, we were feeling like, what can we do to help the situation? And there's a kund, a pond right across the street from the temple. And we saw some ladies bathing in that pond. So we thought, yeah, we can bathe in the pond. That will relieve the awkwardness of the single bathroom thing. So we started bathing in the pond. We saw these other ladies, we were bathing with them. And then one of the well-wishers went to see Srila Prabhupada. He goes, Swamiji, your women are bathing in the pond with the prostitutes. Because the other ladies were prostitutes. We had no idea. So that was the end of our solution. So Krishna consciousness means facilitating all devotees so that they can remain enthusiastic, remain determined to develop to our full potential. And Srila Prabhupada would offered us that facility, that his followers are also ourselves, we're also meant and intended to offer facility to others to come to Krishna consciousness. And this protection in Krishna consciousness is ultimately meant to help one advance spiritually. that the protection of Krishna is that you're perpetually protected. Just Twaktateham Punarjanmanayati, that you won't get another material body. Prabhupada said that is real protection. And Prabhupada protected the women by educating us about our true identities as spirit soul, and he protected the men in the same way. He engaged us in devotional service by which we could obtain liberation from birth and death and the ultimate protection, freedom from birth and death. And he gave us services, head pujaris, preachers, book distribution, art department heads, artists, headmistress of school, the headmistress in the school in New Mayapur. It was Her Grace Jyotirmayi Devi Dasi, proofreaders and other BBT staff. As I mentioned, here we have Vrindavan Priya, European BBT staff, kitchen heads, cooks, a number of other areas. And he based his appointments on their qualifications, not their gender. One time there was she's still around, but one of the first Japanese devotees was Mahaguna Devi Dasi, and she married an American. But Prabhupada told her, you should go back to Tokyo, and you, meaning Mahaguna, you start a temple and you become the temple president. I cooked for Srila Prabhupada in several situations. During the Anantasesha ceremony in Mayapur, when he was put into the earth, it was a big deal because the godbrothers were invited and they came, Srila Prabhupada's godbrothers. And, venerable sannyasis, elderly men. And Prabhupada was there with his Western disciples and some Western sannyas. So we're wondering, who is he going to ask to speak? In front of these very saintly gentlemen, who will he ask? And to everybody's shock, including my own, he said, Malati, you stand up and say something. And, I'm not an erudite scholar. The only thing I could do was glorify Srila Prabhupada. I finished, and the other ones, they could chant verses, slokas, but they're still new, they didn't have the depth and realization behind, So it would be like, when you have the kids, they're learning their slokas, it'd be nice, but in front of these very venerable God brothers, maybe. So he knew how to engage, he knew when to engage, And he even himself was an example. He said that, because there are the different, the Brahmins, the old men, the women, children, old men, Brahmins, all should be protected, right? And Prabhupada himself mentioned that wherever I go, I am being cared for. So he was being protected, but being protected didn't mean that one would not be able to utilize his or her propensities in Krishna's service. It's actually the opposite. Because that protection is there, you are able to very wonderfully offer yourself fully in Krishna's service. It's not because women need protection, they cannot sing or manage or lead to do service that they're inclined to do. Just as protecting old men didn't limit the activities that Srila Prabhupada was able to perform in his advanced stage. For some reason I was thinking it had to finish at 2:00, so I was kind of like, and you're saying 2:20? Huh?
15.
Hmm. So most of us know the regular Namo Om, Vishnu Padaya, Namaste, but there is another pranams that were written by His Holiness Govinda Maharaj and edited by Sridhar Maharaj. And that was at the request of some senior godbrothers. So I will just read the translation that offering to Prabhupada, I offer my humble obeisances unto His divine grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, who was Krishna's beloved associate and came down to this earth from Goloka, taking the order of his guru on his head. He's a Shaktavesh, empowered avatar of Nityananda Prabhu personified. He distributed the Hare Krishna mantra all over the Eastern and Western world, delivering and uplifting all fallen souls. He is the best of millions of Jagat Gurus because he is the personification of divine mercy. He has distributed the sweet nectar of Srimad Bhagavatam and the transcendental knowledge of Bhagavad Gita all over the world. And I wanted to mention, like, Prabhupada was not impressed. Sometimes the devotees would go, Jagat Guru, Srila Prabhupada. But he wasn't impressed by that too much because he said there are so many Jagat Gurus. So he is constantly engaged in exclusive devotional service to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada, Srila Rupa Goswami, and Sri Gauranga Mahaprabhu. I offer my humble obeisances unto Srila Prabhupada, who is like a bumblebee, always tasting the nectar of the lotus feet of Shri Shri Radha Govinda. So we're familiar with his basic story, how he left India at such an advanced stage, how he was struggling alone in New York City. And there is something that many of you may not know. When we hear about his struggling, what was that struggling? I mean, he struggled just to get over here, to get just to get a ticket, that free passage on a cargo ship. That was a struggle. He had to sit down on the doorstep. I will not move until, determination. But not so many people realize the struggles he went through in America. And at one point, there was a blackout. I mean, lights go off sometimes, but this was a major, but it was a Maha blackout. And it wasn't just New York City. It went over into Canada because there was shared grids, electrical grids. And he was at that time in a small, dark, practically closet-sized room without any window to the outside. Not that it would have helped when there's no lights, but no window, no kitchen, no bathroom, just a common toilet in the hallway. It was like a office building. So he's there in that situation. The blackout came. He doesn't know what's going on. There's no radio. There's no phones. And so this Dr. Mishra, who was a Mayavadi, but he had given some facility to Prabhupada. And in fact, it was through him he was in that situation. So he sent a man over with some candles, some fruit. And when he got there, Prabhupada was just sitting peacefully chanting. He wasn't freaked out. He wasn't upset. He was just chanting. Unflinching faith. And something that many people are not familiar with, he wrote in one letter to one friend in India that sometimes at night I can't sleep due to hunger. Even to this day, when I even consider that, it is a painful consideration. This would be in 65, 66. I mean, I was there at that time. I wasn't in New York, but many of his students, we were there on the planet in the same vicinity that he was. And somehow we were separated by illusion, our illusions at that time. and had no idea. And here was His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada. And he was hungry and he couldn't sleep. No. And then in 67, things started to happen a little bit. And then he had that stroke. Yeah, nobody immediately could understand what to do. They brought him to a hospital because we didn't know what to do. And he had to escape the hospital. He said to his students, "They're simply poking me with needles and taking blood. Get me out of here." And Gargamuni, he got one of the, you know how the doctors have this cover? So he put one on. And he got one of those wheelchair gurneys. And he went into the room and he put Prabhupada on that and he starts taking him out. And then the doctors, "What are you doing? What are you doing?" And he keeps marching. "He'll die." Prabhupada said he would, if he preferred to die, if he died, that's okay, but let it not be in this hospital, you know. And then we were trying to find a place where he might recover nicely. So the devotees sought Jersey Shore, New Jersey Shore by the sea, little sun, little sea breeze, but that didn't work out at all because somehow there was nasty weather. So it was cold, it was damp, there was no comfort at all. Then we brought him to California and found a place across in Marin County, across from San Francisco. So he was staying there, and we had our first Rath Yatra. That was July. Because his health was so compromised, and because the roads were like these twisty, turny roads. Here in Michigan, you don't have these kind of situations, but this was like on the side of a mountainous cliff, twist turn. It made him like nauseous, you know. So he wasn't feeling well. He couldn't come to the Rath Yatra. So then the next day, we brought Jagannath Subhadra and Baladev to Srila Prabhupada. You know. He gave an instruction. It's important to keep the body fit and healthy so that we'll not meet the obstacle of ill health while serving Krishna. So ill health may hinder one's service. So we want to avoid it as much as possible. This he commented in Hawaii in 69. In Hyderabad, he was on a morning walk. They foolishly say, struggle for existence, survival of the fittest. But who is fit? He doesn't know. Fitness means one who does not get a material body next time. He is fit. Because as soon as you get a material body, then again the struggle begins. You know. A lot of times devotees have this idea about fasting. And Prabhupada gave us good fasting. You know, there is the twice a month we have Ekadashi, then we have so many wonderful days like Janmashtami, Gaur Purnim. Our first fast, organized fast, Gaur Purnim 67. And he told us if you to fast until the sun set. And said if you can't fast, you can take a little fruit juice or a little sugar candy. So, he's talking about Mishri, but we didn't know that. So, sugar candy, okay, well, they had these things called lifesavers. And you would get they were in colors, red, green, yellow, orange, So I went and I got a whole bunch of because in those days they were only a nickel, 5 cents, or a little package of life. So, I got lifesavers. We all had our little package of lifesavers in case we needed some, some reviving. But sometimes people just artificially fast, Prabhupada said, if you can fast, that's tapasya, but it should not be artificial. And he gave the example, Raghunath Das Goswami. he was fasting, but he wasn't just fasting, like here, if you fast, we see sometimes on the fast days, devotees are just feeling like weak and they're falling asleep, oh, looking at the clock. But he was fasting, but Raghunath he was 3 times a day taking a bath. He was offering obeisances hundreds of times in his parikrama. His regular activities were not stopped. He was taking every alternate day a little quantity of chach, the buttermilk. That's all. But we can't imitate that. We start to fast and we're tired and then we're not doing any service. So then what's the use of such fasting? And this was Prabhupada's point. He put a handwritten letter in the kitchen. Health is number 1. Chanting is number 2. Service is number 3. And then comes reading. Well, I was trying to explain to somebody today who was asking me about, having feelings in Krishna consciousness. Some devotees are having, apparently such wonderful feelings, and others not having such, feeling they don't have feelings. So it was a story with maybe some of you know Shuta Kirti, who was Prabhupada's personal assistant. And he was always noticing whenever they arrived somewhere, there would just be, the devotees were just jumping up and down and crying out and even really crying, And he was just feeling, I don't feel like that. He was seeing everybody in such a mood of ecstasy except himself. And so they had arrived in New Dwarka, which was Los Angeles, and he was preparing for Srila Prabhupada's massage, but his mind was so disturbed. He was just thinking, everyone else has such love for Prabhupada except me. And he was saying he felt like a cheater, he felt like an imposter. So he finally got the courage to say something to Prabhupada, but he did it while he was doing his back, so he wouldn't have to, see him face to face. And he goes, Srila Prabhupada, all of your disciples have so much love for you. It makes me feel so bad. I lack this intense love. When I'm with you at the airport, I see everyone dancing, chanting, and crying. And I have so much association with you, but I don't feel this overwhelming love like they do. So he was hoping that Prabhupada would say something to appease him, relieve his mind, but Prabhupada remained silent. And then after, the massage, he takes bath, he chanted Gayatri, and then he called Shuto into the room. And that was another thing. So his name is Shruti Kirti. But at one point he said, so your name is Shruti Kirti, but I will call you Shuto. So that's an affection, you call your kids or your wife or your husband some little short name. So he called Shuto into his room, and he had a very serious look on his face. And he said, so do you like serving me? He asked. Oh, yes, Srila Prabhupada, I like serving you very much. And Prabhupada said, then that is love. Everyone can do so many things, singing, dancing, jumping up and down, but you're actually doing something. Isn't that love? So you just do your service. That's all that's necessary. That's what love means, to do some service. No. This little memory. So this person, he was reflecting just recently, and he was sharing among some God brothers and God sisters how he had joined ISKCON in the winter of 73. So February is, that's a cold month. And even in India, it's a cold month. If you're in northern India, like if you're in Bombay, not Bombay, but Vrindavan or in Mayapur. And in those days, if you didn't go to Mongol Arti, you didn't get breakfast prasad. It was across the board. And they even had a Western devotee standing and taking attendance at the temple gate. So this person, he was telling, he was a kid, he was in the Gurukul at the time, and he was saying, I was always tired due to lack of sleep, but there was no way out of if you wanted prasadam, you had to go. And I think it was maybe like 9 at the time, and this was in the Mayapur Gurukul. So, there was about Jai Hare Krishna. So there was maybe about 15 boys. And then 3 American boys joined the Gurukul. And, Americans were a little bit more adventuresome. So this boy, he came up with a plan, and he went to one of the American boys. And this happened to be Dwarkadish, who was very affectionately known as Mr. DDD, Dwarkadish Das, Mr. DDD, Prabhupada would call him. He had taken his hand to teach him how to write Sanskrit. He was very affectionate with him. And his mother had asked, she joined with the boy, and she goes, what is my duty? What is my obligation with regards to this child? And he goes, your duty is to see that he never takes birth again in the material world. So they had this idea, like that the 3 American boys would skip Mongol Arti and they'd sleep in to get some extra rest. But to do that, they'd have to find a place where they wouldn't be found. So I can't remember his name, but he told them that the Radhamadava garden is perfect. Nobody will think of looking there. So it worked. They all went in, the 3 American boys, and he was Canadian. And they got in their sleeping bags, zipped it up, and they slept till 8 o'clock in the morning. And so they felt like, wow, really good sleep. But now they got showered, they got dressed in their dhoti and their tilak, and they went directly to Prabhupada. And he had just finished the Bhagavatam class. So he was outside chanting japa on his balcony. And so the 4 of them walk up, and they had Dwarkadish in the front because everybody knew Mr. DDD. And they made obeisances, and Dwarkadish looked at Prabhupada and explained the reason for their visit. Like they weren't going to get prasad, and Prabhupada's eyes got very wide. And he goes, oh, and he looked really concerned, like a loving father. And he immediately called for one of the twin brothers, Jananivas and Pankaj Jangari, to have to feed something immediately. So suddenly, on Prabhupada's orders, everybody was getting breakfast prasad and giving it to these boys. And he was remembering it was puri, there was potato sabji, there was flat rice mixed with veggies, there was halava, there were Mongol Arti sweets, bale fruit juice. They were fed very sumptuously. So they're all remembering, this is the love that we got from Srila Prabhupada. And it just didn't even equal that of our parents. He wasn't like, what? You didn't go to Mongol Arti? Oh, you haven't eaten, you can't eat. No, that can't be. Taking care. So after they finished eating, they thanked Srila Prabhupada, and then they showed up for their class on time. Oh. And then, finally, it was 67, the first New York Rath Yatra. And there was no place around the temple to build the Rath cars. So they got a place. Some people think it was the man who's now the president signed the order because he was working at that time that, yeah, they could use this place, this empty lot, to build the carts. It may or may not be a fact. But they were there, and in addition to building the carts, every night 3 or 4 of them went out and pasted flyers all over about the Rath Yatra festival. And then they'd get back early in the morning. So one morning they got back and they were just covered with paste. They made their own, flour and water. a bucket and a big brush. So they were like splattered with this stuff all over. And I walked in the temple lobby, and suddenly Prabhupada came out of the elevator. And then, they were like looking a little strange, and it's still early in the morning. So he kind of looked, and he was like, they were stunned. They make obeisances, and he kind of looked at him with like, a puzzled glance. And he just said, I didn't know what to say. So then Prabhupada asked, who were they? And then the devotees explained, Prabhupada, they were out all night putting up posters for the Rath Yatra festival. They just returned. And then he said, tell them I said, thank you very much. The Prabhupada was always grateful for any little service, large or small, that was offered. And of course, the most amazing person with the connection with Rath Yatras, Jayananda Prabhu. Prabhupada wrote in one letter in February, this body is finished today or tomorrow, February 77. This body is finished today or tomorrow. We should not be very much bothered about the body, because he had gotten this heavy duty cancer, leukemia, with something else. So he said, some trees can live for thousands of years, but that doesn't mean it's a successful life. A successful life is one of Krishna consciousness. And by the grace of Krishna, from the very beginning, you're a devotee, and that's the real profit of your life. About a sadhu, it is said, Jiva va marava, a sadhu may live or die, it doesn't matter. While living, he's engaged in Krishna consciousness. And when dying, he goes back home, back to Godhead. So that was February of 77. And then in May of 77, Jayananda took leave of his body. And Prabhupada wrote, after the departure, my dear Jayananda, please accept my blessings. I'm feeling very intensely your separation. In 1967, you joined me in San Francisco. You were driving my car and chanting Hare Krishna. He was the taxi driver. He was a graduate of OSU with an engineering degree, but he just could not find comfort in the world. And he decided, let me go to San Francisco. Things are going on out there. Let me see. So you have to support. He drove a cab. And he was driving by the temple quite a few times. And then one time he sees these young people going in and out because it's a storefront, there's a big window. He stopped and he's looking in the window, and Mukunda saw him and he went out, come in, come in. And then he just started coming, and coming. Prabhupada wrote, so he goes, you were driving my car and chanting Hare Krishna, and you were the first man to give me some contribution, $5,000 for printing my Bhagavad Gita. So his grandmother had died. She left him this money. And he offered it. Prabhupada said, no, you may need it. He goes, I wouldn't know what to do with it, but I know you would. So then Prabhupada accepted, and it went toward the printing, the first printing. He said, and then after that, you rendered very valuable service to Krishna in different ways. I so hope at the time of your death you were remembering Krishna, and as such, you've been promoted to the eternal association of Krishna. If not, if you had any tinge of material desire, you've gone to the celestial kingdom to live with the demigods for many thousands of years and to enjoy opulent life of material existence. And from there, you can promote yourself to the spiritual world. But even if one fails to promote himself to the spiritual world, at that time he comes again on the surface of this globe and takes birth in a big family like yogis or Brahmins or an aristocratic family where there is again the chance of reviving your Krishna consciousness. But as you are hearing Krishna Kirtan, I am sure that you are directly promoted to Krishna Loka. So that was the deep affection Prabhupada exhibited and the compassion, he had this compassionate urgency to spread the holy name. He said, so we have to push this Krishna consciousness movement on with great difficulty. When I came to America, I went by ship. And when it stopped at the Commonwealth Pier in Boston, I was thinking, if I say no illicit sex, no meat eating, no intoxication, no gambling, these people will immediately say, please go home, old man. That's their position. These are their daily affairs in the Western country. And if you want to make them stop these things, they'll think this man is a lunatic. There's different types of ticks. You know what ticks are? Deer ticks, dog ticks. There's lunatics also. Yeah. So this movement Prabhupada explained was actually meant for the fourth class, the 5th class, the 10th class of men. It's not that this movement is 4th or 5th class, but these people are so fallen, they cannot even be counted as 3rd or 4th class. They're 10th class men. Prabhupada once said, I require 1st class men, but Krishna just sent me 4th class. What can I do? But he engaged us anyway. So this is the movement. It's to deliver the 10th class men, deliver them. Patita Pavana Hetu Tava Avatara. Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's incarnation is for these classes of men, for us. He didn't mean to start the movement for the high class Brahmins, the sages or the saintly persons. It was all for the most fallen, Patita Pavana. In Kali Yuga, everyone is fallen. So don't be disappointed. Go on, go on. No. No. Hare Krishna. But it's a big lesson. He said, in Kali Yuga, everyone is fallen. Don't be disappointed. Go on, go on. I was explaining to one person today that, if you become discouraged, that is a gift of Maya. So we should avoid discouragement. And if we do feel discouraged, you can realize, knock, 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 it's Maya, she's knocking on your door. Shut that door. Don't let her in. So thank you very much for letting me in. And I was amazed when I pulled up today that we pulled up that practically every space in the parking lot was filled. So that was a very beautiful thing to see, so many devotees are responding to your efforts. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Let us express our gratitude to Malati.
And I say to you, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol. And I'm throwing flower petals on all of you because you're all so wonderful.
Only one announcement. Next Friday, Saturday, Sunday, we have Brahmotsav 2018. Under her guidance, we welcome the next Radha Gopishan. So this is our 8th, 7th date, and we are finishing 7th. 8th anniversary. So 7 years passed just like that. Actually, 8 years. Yeah, 8 years passed. So anyway, next week, Ram Rai Prabhu, Associate Finder Prabhu, Ram Rai Prabhu, Network Prabhu, and Tulsi Prabhu, and Pandavanda. We are coming because of this remote, so we have April 18th, Friday, 4 to 7:30, we have Kirtan, and as a class. I think Ramraj Prabhu class. Then Saturday 19th, we have 12-hour Kirtan from morning 10 a.m. to evening 10 p.m. And Prasad, of course. Sunday, Bhagavatam class by Ramraj Prabhu and Americans who are the optional class by, they are all very dedicated devotees actually. So please come. Next week is this wonderful festival, and the temple is, we have only one more job. Just to please have the permission of the and of course, to please Malati group also. She has been tirelessly preaching for more than 5 decades, close to 6 decades. So she wants the movement to grow in leaps and bounds, and she wants everyone to become devotee of Krishna, following the footsteps of Srila Prabhupada. I have a question for all of you. How many of you have seen anybody practicing bhakti close to 6 decades? I don't think anyone is 60 years here. So let us express our gratitude in the Gaura's heart, loudly chanting the Hari We will be here next week or not.
I'm in Columbus. But I also would like to say that there's a very substantial Christian holiday, Easter, on this Sunday. So, just,
The one reason we kept this Friday program is Friday is already for so please come. That year we installed, when we started the ceremony, April 15th and it went on for 6 days. And the Saturday we installed the babies, that's 21st, is actually Monday. There's a festival also on Monday, but it is weekend and long weekend, so the festival is Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Please do come and we can take part in Kirtan. Last 2 years went on very well, So because we focus on placing Rama Bhakti by doing nice ceremony, we are trying and we request you to be part of it. Thank you very much.
one more thing is that one time, one head of a monastery met with Srila Prabhupada in Australia, and he asked Srila Prabhupada, what do you think of Jesus Christ? And Prabhupada said, oh, he was the very best Son of God. And I want that my disciples will also be Christ-like. Hare Krishna.